Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the art of expanding your reef tank sustainably. For a lot of hobbyists, the idea of literally cutting into a living organism feels pretty daunting. It's almost like you're performing high-stakes medical surgery on some kind of alien life form. But today, we're going to reframe that entirely. We're looking at coral fragging not as a clinical procedure, but as a deeply rewarding, careful craft. By the end of this, you'll see exactly how mastering this skill lets you cultivate a thriving, vibrant ecosystem right in your own living room. Here is our agenda for today. First, what is coral fragging? Second, the core fragging steps. Third, the secret, water stability. Fourth, avoiding common frag risks. And finally, number 5, growing your new colony. All right, let's jump right into Section 1. What is coral fragging? If you've been in the reef-keeping game for a bit, you know this struggle all too well. You look at those massive, fully grown centerpiece corals at the local fish store, and then you look at those astronomical price tags. So how on earth do you expand your tank without spending an absolute fortune? And just as importantly, how do you introduce new growth without causing massive biological disruption to that delicate balance you've already painstakingly established? Well, the answer is coral fragging. The concept is elegantly simple. You just take a healthy piece, a frag, from an existing coral and give it a secure surface to recover on. But keep in mind, you aren't just breaking off a rock here. You're separating living tissue and delicate calcium carbonate skeleton structure. This craft requires minimizing stress, keeping it out of low-quality air as much as possible, and swiftly providing a stable home. Do that, and that severed tissue can heal and eventually flourish into its very own colony. Moving right along to Section 2, the core fragging steps. This step-by-step workflow ensures you're treating that fresh frag exactly like a vulnerable patient. First off, you absolutely must start with a healthy parent colony. You just can't expect a stressed, bleaching coral to yield a successful frag. Next, your tools. Whether you're using bone shears, a scalpel, or a specialized bandsaw, they have to be sterilized and prepped before you even make a cut. The separation itself requires controlled force. While a branching SPS coral might snap off pretty easily, a fleshy LPS coral, that requires actual surgical precision. And finally, you want to immediately return it to clean aquarium water and secure it to its substrate. Think of this step kind of like a broken bone that needs a cast. Getting this attachment phase right is absolutely critical. Hobbyists use all sorts of things: specialized ceramic plugs, cyanoacrylate gel, epoxy putty. The main goal here is a highly secure fit. Why? Because a tight, unmoving fit drastically reduces tissue irritation from the water movement in your tank. If that frag is wobbling around in the current, it's constantly tearing its newly forming tissue. A secure attachment lets the coral rest, heal, and seamlessly fuse its skeleton right to the new base. Okay, Section 3, the secret, water stability. Now, this right here brilliantly illustrates the real driver of your success. Listen, you could have the cleanest surgical cut in the world, but if your water isn't right, the frag simply won't make it. Survival is completely tethered to keeping your numbers perfectly stable during those critical first days. We're talking consistent temperature, appropriate salinity, and rock-solid alkalinity and calcium levels. It's actually not even about hitting a perfect magic number. It's about avoiding rapid swings that shock the coral. Your filtration performance and overall tank cleanliness are what dictate whether that damaged tissue heals beautifully or unfortunately succumbs to a bacterial infection. And within that stable setup, you've also got to hit the perfect balance with your water flow. It's a total Goldilocks situation because, as we all know, corals can be incredibly dramatic. You need enough flow to promote essential gas exchange and blow away any settling detritus. Because if detritus builds up on that freshly cut tissue, it's basically an open invitation for disease and rapid tissue necrosis. But on the flip side, the flow has to remain gentle enough that it doesn't aggressively blast the frag's flush or knock it loose from its new plug. Which brings us to Section 4, avoiding common frag risks. Look, even experienced pros run into snags. This table maps out exactly how to counter the most common pitfalls. Handling stress? You mitigate that by keeping the coral out of the water for the absolute shortest time possible. Poor attachment? That's solved by immediate secure placement. And detritus buildup is countered by dialing in that balanced flow we just talked about. By obsessing over these 3 areas, your frag safely transitions from a highly vulnerable, freshly cut state into an actively healing one. Watch your frag super closely in these days. You're looking for positive signs like normal polyp extension or even tissue swelling right over the glue line to confirm it's on the right track. Finally, Section 5, growing your new colony. Managing this long-term growth is where immense patience really pays off. You want to adjust light and flow super gradually. Never shock the coral. As the colony gets bigger over the coming months, spacing becomes a huge deal. Corals are fiercely competitive organisms. If they're placed too closely, they don't just passively block each other's light. No, they will literally wage chemical warfare or deploy stinging sweeper tentacles at night to attack their neighbors for real estate. So give your new craft the safe room it actually needs to thrive.
Now, this brings us to a really crucial, often overlooked point. A self-grown, fragged coral has a massive biological advantage over a brand new store-bought specimen. Think about it for a second. A newly purchased coral just barely survived the stress of bagging, transit, entirely alien water chemistry, and totally foreign lighting. But your self-fragged coral, it is already 100% adapted to your specific system's unique parameters. It's got home field advantage. Because of this, self-fragged corals almost always exhibit vastly superior long-term resilience.
Coral fragging is best approached as a careful craft rather than a quick process. That fundamental philosophy from our source material perfectly encapsulates everything we've covered today. Fragging is not a race, and it's certainly not just chopping up corals. With fast, clean handling and a relentless commitment to your water quality, expanding your reef stops being this stressful, expensive gamble. Instead, it transforms into a beautiful, repeatable skill, one that allows you to curate a stunning underwater landscape entirely with your own two hands. So, now that you know the science and the secrets behind this super rewarding process, it's time to take a close look at your own tank. Look at the miniature ocean you're curating every day. Are you just going to be a consumer of the reef, or are you ready to become an active cultivator? Which healthy parent coral is ready to multiply, and where exactly will your craftsman's journey begin? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy reefing!